I am an endocrinologist, and I need to tell you something that most of my colleagues in urology are only now beginning to accept, even though the biochemistry has been staring at us for over a decade. There is a seed, ordinary, inexpensive, available in any grocery store, that targets the single most underdiagnosed hormonal imbalance, destroying erectile function in men over 60. Not low testosterone, not poor circulation. The problem I am talking about is excess estrogen in the male body, and it is far more common than you think. I have tested thousands of men over the age of 60. When they come in complaining about erections that are weaker, less frequent, or simply gone, the first thing their previous doctor checked was total testosterone. And in most cases, that number came back somewhere in the low normal range, enough for the doctor to say everything looks fine. But when I run a complete panel and look at the estradiol level alongside free testosterone, the picture changes completely. I see men whose bodies are actively converting their remaining testosterone into estrogen at an accelerated rate, and no one told them. No one even looked. If you are over 60 and your erections have declined in the past 2 years, stay with me through this entire video. I am going to explain the mechanism that is almost certainly contributing to your problem, the one blood marker your doctor probably never ordered, and the specific dietary and hormonal strategies, including one seed that directly targets this pathway, that I have seen produce measurable changes in my patients. This is not speculation. This is endocrinology. The enzyme responsible for this conversion is called aromatase. Every man has it. It lives in your fat tissue, your liver, your muscle, and even in your brain. Its job is to convert androgens, including testosterone, into estradiol, which is a form of estrogen. In younger men, this process is balanced. The body produces enough testosterone that the small percentage converted to estrogen does not create a problem. But after 60, two things happen simultaneously. Testosterone production slows because the cells in the testes that manufacture it, called Leydig cells, become less responsive to the brain's signal telling them to produce. And at the same time, aromatase activity increases, particularly in men who carry more abdominal fat. So you are making less testosterone and losing more of it to conversion. The ratio shifts, and when estradiol rises relative to free testosterone, the consequences are not subtle. Elevated estradiol suppresses the pulsatile release of luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland. That is the signal your brain sends to your testes to keep producing testosterone. So excess estrogen does not just steal the testosterone you already have. It tells your brain to stop asking for more. It is a feedback loop that accelerates its own damage. And here's the part that connects directly to your erections. Estradiol at elevated levels interferes with nitric oxide synthase in the smooth muscle of the erectile tissue. Nitric oxide is the molecule that relaxes blood vessels inside the penis, allowing blood to flow in and create an erection. Without adequate nitric oxide signaling, the mechanical process of erection cannot complete, regardless of desire, regardless of stimulation. This is not a psychological problem. This is a biochemical bottleneck with a measurable cause. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism examined men between 60 and 75 and found that those with estradiol levels above 35 picograms per milliliter had significantly lower scores on validated erectile function assessments compared to men of the same age with estradiol below 25. The testosterone levels between the two groups were not dramatically different. The estradiol ratio was the variable that separated functional from dysfunctional. And yet most standard hormone panels ordered by general practitioners do not include estradiol for men. That oversight is costing men years of erectile function they did not have to lose. Before I go into the practical guidelines, I need to be honest with you about something I learned only after years of managing this problem with pharmaceutical tools alone. For most of my career, I relied exclusively on testosterone replacement therapy and pharmaceutical estrogen blockers. I viewed anything outside the pharmacopoeia, any botanical, any supplement, as folk medicine lacking the pharmacokinetic rigor I was trained to demand. What changed was a pattern I could not ignore. I had a subset of patients, men between 60 and 68, whose estradiol levels were elevated but not high enough to justify pharmaceutical intervention. They were in that gray zone, where prescribing an aromatase inhibitor carried side effects that outweighed the benefit, but doing nothing meant watching the ratio deteriorate. Lifestyle modifications helped, but the hormonal response was slower than the clinical timeline demanded. I began researching botanical compounds with documented aromatase modulating activity and found two with consistent mechanistic data. The first is forskolin, extracted from the Coleus forskolli root. Forskolin activates an enzyme called adenylate cyclase inside the Leydig cells, the cells in the testes responsible for manufacturing testosterone. By increasing cyclic AMP, forskolin amplifies the volume of the production signal without introducing external hormones. It helps the body respond more effectively to its own instructions. The second is tribulus terrestris. Tribulus stimulates the release of luteinizing hormone, the exact signal that elevated estradiol suppresses. So while forskolin works at the production site, tribulus works at the signaling origin. Together, they address both ends of the disrupted axis. In the patients where I introduced this combination, men between 60 and 68 with that borderline estradiol elevation, I observed measurable improvement in the free testosterone to estradiol ratio within 3 to 4 weeks. Not in every patient, not dramatically, but consistently enough across this subgroup that I have kept it as a standing component of the protocol I recommend for men in that hormonal gray zone. I verified the composition and purity of what I recommend before including it. That is non-negotiable for me. This is not medication. It is targeted nutritional support with a documented mechanism, and it works within the biological framework I just explained to you. I placed the link in the video description for anyone who wants to review the ingredient profile at their own pace. Now, the guidelines you can start applying today. The seed I referenced in the title is the pumpkin seed, and the reason it matters for this specific problem is its concentration of zinc. Zinc is a direct inhibitor of aromatase activity. A study from Wayne State University demonstrated that zinc-deficient men had significantly elevated estradiol conversion rates compared to zinc-sufficient controls, and that restoring zinc status reduced aromatase activity measurably within 60 days. One handful of raw pumpkin seeds, roughly 30 grams, provides approximately 2.5 milligrams of zinc, along with magnesium and phytosterols that independently support testosterone metabolism. The key is consistency. This is not a one-time intervention. It is a daily dietary pattern that shifts the enzymatic environment over weeks. The second guideline is body composition management, specifically abdominal fat reduction. Visceral fat is the single largest reservoir of aromatase in the male body. Every kilogram of abdominal fat you carry is an active estrogen factory converting your testosterone around the clock. You do not need to become lean. You need to create a sustained caloric environment where visceral fat mobilizes gradually. Even a 5 to 8% reduction in waist circumference has been shown to lower estradiol levels independently of any supplementation or medication. If you are finding this information useful, if this is the kind of explanation you wish you had received in the doctor's office, I need your help getting it to more men who need it. Subscribe to this channel and leave a like on this video. That is how this content reaches the men who are searching for answers and getting nothing but a prescription and a handshake. The third guideline involves sleep architecture. Testosterone production peaks during deep slow-wave sleep, the phase your body enters in the first 3 to 4 hours of the night. Men who consistently sleep fewer than 6 hours, or who have fragmented sleep from conditions like sleep apnea, produce up to 15% less testosterone per night than men who achieve 7 or more hours of consolidated sleep. That deficit compounds. Over months, it tilts the testosterone to estradiol ratio in exactly the wrong direction. Prioritize sleep hygiene not as a wellness trend, but as a hormonal intervention, because that is precisely what it is. The fourth guideline is reducing alcohol intake, particularly beer. Alcohol directly upregulates aromatase activity in liver tissue. Beer compounds this effect because hops contain phytoestrogens that mimic estradiol at receptor sites. A man over 60 who drinks 2 or more beers daily is simultaneously increasing estrogen production and introducing plant-based estrogen mimics, a double mechanism that accelerates the exact imbalance we have been discussing. Reducing intake to 2 or fewer servings per week creates a measurable shift in hepatic aromatase expression within 30 to 45 days. What I see across decades of clinical practice is something studies measuring isolated variables cannot capture. The men who lose erectile function gradually after 60 almost never have one catastrophic cause. They have an accumulation of small imbalances: more aromatase activity, less deep sleep, more visceral fat, more hepatic load, that individually fall within normal range but collectively push the system past its functional threshold. The body compensates until it cannot, and by the time the symptom becomes obvious, the underlying shifts have been building for years. The relationship between hormonal balance and quality of life after 60 is not abstract. It determines energy, motivation, confidence, physical resilience, and sexual function. These are not separate domains. They share the same biochemical infrastructure. When that infrastructure is maintained, men in their 60s and 70s function at a level that would have been exceptional a generation ago. When it is neglected, the decline is compounding. Today, I explained the aromatase mechanism, the estradiol ratio most doctors never measure, and the dietary and hormonal strategies that directly target this pathway. If any of this was new to you, you now have information that puts you ahead of the vast majority of men your age. Tell me in the comments, has any doctor ever measured your estradiol level alongside your testosterone? Or was total testosterone the only number you were ever shown? The hormonal axis I described today has plasticity. It can respond to intervention, but that responsiveness is not permanent. Leydig cells lose their capacity to upregulate production with each year of suppressed signaling. The window where dietary changes, sleep optimization, and targeted nutritional support can shift the ratio is real, but it narrows. The combination I mentioned works within that window, supporting the body's own production machinery while the lifestyle changes create the environment for it to operate. It does not replace what I outlined today. It amplifies the response when the axis needs more support than habits alone provide. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Review the composition and decide on your own terms. The patients who respond best to this protocol are not the ones who found one magic solution. They are the ones who understood the mechanism, corrected the modifiable factors, and gave their bodies the specific support the biology demanded before the window closed.